What's going on, guys? Today we are back with another video, and today I have for you all my endgame build guide for Fireball Sorcerer. This build is a blast to play. I've been playing it pretty much for the entirety of endgame in my Season 2 playthrough. The build is insanely fast at farming open world content like Hell Tides and Blood Harvest, where you're looking to get mats as fast as possible. It's also very good for farming lower tier nightmare dungeons, where you're trying to get gear and gold, as well as level up your glyphs as fast as possible. I even have the build ready and optimized for Nightmare Tier 100, which is currently the hardest form of Nightmare Dungeons in the game. So today I'll be going over everything you need to know from the skill tree, Paragon board, gear, Vampiric Powers, as well as some tips and tricks for Nightmare Tier 100 to help you along the way. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, let's dive into the skill tree first. Now the way I have the skill tree set up is mostly optimized for Nightmare Tier 100. However, whenever I'm speed farming open world content or doing easier stuff, I don't really change anything at all. I just pretty much leave it as it is, and I'm still able to do that stuff super fast and with no problems at all. The only thing I'll really change is my enchantments, where usually if I'm running Firebolt enchantment, I'll swap in Fireball enchantment for speed farming. This is just going to give me more AoE damage and explosions, where instead where I would have Firebolt and I'm getting burn damage, this isn't really that useful since stuff dies so fast, so we just slot in Fireball enchantment. However, if I am doing anything harder, I will put back in Firebolt enchantment to get that burning. Now for the skill tree, in our first 2 points, we have Frostbolt and Firebolt. The main reason we have these two are for the enchantment effects, where this gives us a chill and this gives us a burn. And these two interact with a lot of various glyphs, aspects, powers, other nodes in the skill tree. So the reason why we have these is because they are very important to the build and they interact with a lot of different stuff. As we go through the stuff, you'll see like what interacts with this and where. Over here, we max out Fireball since this is our main spender and source of damage, and we take Destructive Fireball for more critical strike damage. This is going to give us more damage than this node here, so we take this one. We have 3 points into Devastation to give us more mana to allow us to spam Fireball more. 3 points here into Elemental Dominance for more damage for our Fireball. 3 points into Potent Warding for more resistances, which are very important in Nightmare Tier 100. You're pretty much going to have constant uptime on this, so very, very nice to have. For our 3 defensives, we are going with Flame Shield, Teleport, and Frost Nova. These two give us a Stun Break, which is very nice for Nightmare Tier 100, and Flame Shield also makes you immune to all damage, which can save your life every now and then. So very important to have. And then Frost Nova we are using mostly to set up a burst. Whenever we have stuff grouped up and we Frost Nova them, we're going to be getting a lot of damage multipliers against frozen enemies. So we really want this for burst damage. Other than that, we have 1 point here to be able to reset the cooldown on one of our defensives. Now this is chosen at random, and this does proc pretty often, so it's a very nice bonus to have more uptime on your defensives. And then Glass Cannon just for more damage. Over here in the Conjuration branch, we have 3 points into Precision Magic. Since we do have quite a few Lucky Hit Chance procs, we do want to take this to smooth out those procs. Align the Elements gives us some extra DR. This will help you be tankier, like when you're engaging a pack of elites in a Nightmare Tier 100. So just to make you tankier off the start. And then since we are spamming so many fireballs, we are going to have pretty high uptime on this Mana Shield, which gives us 21% DR. Over here in the Mastery branch, we're just taking all this stuff that interacts with our Pyromancy skills. This gives us more damage while we're healthy. This gives us a chance to immobilize, which synergizes with a couple of our aspects and powers, as well as this skill node here, which we need stuff to be immobilized from to get this max damage bonus. So we get this damage bonus, which is critical strike against burning enemies. Now, in order to benefit from this, we do need to have the Firebolt enchant equipped, which makes enemies burn. So that's one of the reasons we do have Firebolt enchantment. Over here we go Permafrost into Hoarfrost. We only really care about Hoarfrost, which gives us more damage to chilled or frozen enemies. So to be able to benefit from this, we have Frostbolt Enchantment, which gives us 9% damage since stuff will be chilled. And then also we get 18% extra damage when stuff is Frost Novaed, which is when our big burst happens. Inferno, we have 3 points into it. The damage of this isn't really that important. What we really want is the Supreme Inferno, which gives us no mana cost, as well as the pool. So what this allows you to do is group up a pack of elites and then just spam fireballs to your heart's content and absolutely delete everything. Very nice for higher tier dungeons. We have Fiery Surge, which gives us more mana regen whenever we kill a burning enemy. So another reason we need the Firebolt enchantment to give us more mana for more fireball spam. And then we have Essie's Ferocity, which is going to give us crit chance and crit damage. You're pretty much going to have both of these bonuses up pretty often, so this is going to give you a lot of damage. The other one interacts mostly with burning builds, which we are not, so this is definitely the better option. And that's pretty much everything you guys need to know for the skill tree. Now that we have this skill tree, let's get into the Paragon. So the Paragon right now is also pretty much optimized for Nightmare Tier 100s. However, I don't really change anything for speed farming, and I don't really ever run into any issues at all. I'll go through and mostly highlight the important stuff, mainly like the glyphs and the legendary nodes. Um, this glyph here is Destruction, which gives us a lot of extra crit damage, as well as multiplied damage whenever we crit something. So this is a lot of damage from one glyph. And then on this board we have Dex maxed out to give us as much damage from this as possible. And then I'd say the most important thing on the board here is non-physical damage, which interacts with our 2 legendary nodes that we're taking. The non-physical damage is giving us more damage here with Searing Heat. Searing Heat gives us an extra 10% crit, as well as an extra 30% damage with our fire abilities. This scales with all of your bonus fire damage, which you get from stuff like fire damage, as well as non-physical damage. So we're taking out as much non-physical damage as possible to be able to scale this node. And then this node, Frigid Fate, gives you extra multiplied damage to vulnerable enemies, equal to 10% of the amount of bonus damage with cold that you have. So this is also scaling with non-physical damage because non-physical damage gives you extra bonus damage with cold, which you're generally not going to be stacking as a fire build. However, since non-physical damage also gives you fire damage, it is very nice to stack it, and it gives you more multiplied damage here. So on the second board, we are using Searing Heat. In the glyph socket, we have Control. I think Control is probably one of the best glyphs in the game for any build. This gives you a lot of damage, and the way we're benefiting from this is with the Frostbolt enchantment. Since it chills stuff, we're getting 111% extra damage, as well as 10% multiplied damage. And then when we Frost Nova stuff, we are instead getting 20% extra multiplied damage. So this is a very, very, very important glyph to have. Other than that, I have the Searing Heat node, like I mentioned, some extra fire and crit damage here, some extra DR from burning enemies. We can only benefit from this with the Firebolt enchantment, which is why we need it. More fire damage here, and then some fire resistance here. Over to the next board which is Burning Instinct. On this board, I am taking some extra DR and armor. This is for Nightmare Tier 100. We get some extra damage to burning enemies here, as well as DR from burning enemies here. So again, more stuff that we need Firebolt for. The Firebolt enchantment. And the glyph we're running Unleash. I'm mostly running this glyph because it gives a little bit of extra DR. However, it also gives you mana regen. And with Fireball, the most important thing for Fireball is getting as much mana and mana regen as possible. And this is the only glyph that helps you do that. So I thought it was pretty important to include this into the build. On the next board, we have Enchantment Master. On this board, we're getting a lot of non-physical damage, which is scaling our 2 legendary nodes, as well as some extra max life and damage to elites here. Over here, more non-physical damage. And then on this glyph, we have damage to burning enemies from Flame Feeder. Um, so in order to use this glyph, we do need the Firebolt enchantment. And with that, we're also getting an extra 10% multiplied direct damage to burning enemies, which is very nice. Over to the next board is the Icefall board. And this glyph we have Enchanter, which is giving me more non-physical damage to scale the 2 legendary nodes. And then we're also getting DR from Chilled and damage to Chilled. And we're benefiting from both of these with the Frostbolt enchantment. And then up to the last board, like I mentioned, we are taking Frigid Fate. And then we're also taking some extra lucky hit chance to smooth out some of our procs. We also get some extra cold resist here, as well as some extra cold resist here, and then vulnerable damage here. And then in our glyph, we have Territorial. I'm mostly running this for the DR since it's nice to have in Nightmare Tier 100. And then the extra little bit of damage it's okay. But yeah, that's the main important stuff that you need to know with the Paragon board and why it's set up the way it is. Alright guys, let's take a look at the last piece of the puzzle here, which is the gear and the Vampiric Powers. So let's quickly start off with the Vampiric Powers. I'm usually pretty much always running these 5 Vampiric Powers, with the exception of one case, which I will go over in a second. So we have Undying, which gives me healing whenever I cast a skill. This is pretty good when coupled with Ravenous, which gives me attack speed on a lucky hit chance. So when I have this proc and I have a bunch of attack speed and my fireballs are shooting out like a machine gun, this is giving me an insane amount of healing. And I find that pretty useful in a Nightmare Tier 100, so I really like this power a lot. Like I just mentioned, we have Ravenous. Ravenous is very nice, gives you a lot of attack speed. Prey on the Weak, which gives you vulnerable from Vampiric Curses and vulnerable damage, and you're getting Vampiric Curses from Accursed Touch, which is a lucky hit chance to proc Curse and spread it. The extra damage you get on the souls here is also pretty good, and is definitely useful in a Nightmare Tier 100, so I like this power as well. And then the last one is Domination, which is a lot of extra damage since we benefit from Immobilize and Frozen. As a plus also, if you hit any non-elite and they get immobilized while their health is low, they'll just instantly die, and that'll save you from having to spam a couple extra fireballs, which is pretty good for mana. So the only variation I will run here is for Nightmare Tier 100, like very high Nightmare Tier dungeons. I will swap out Accursed Touch for Metamorphosis on bosses only. And I'll do this because on bosses I swap to, instead of these pants that I usually wear, I will swap to Tybalt's Will. And what Tybalt's Will does is it gives me extra damage on the boss while I'm unstoppable. We get unstoppable from this power, which gives me unstoppable whenever I evade. So whenever I evade, I'm getting extra damage and unstoppable, and I'm also getting my resource back. So it just lets me spam fireballs more. We run out of mana, evade, mana comes back, we spam some more, rinse and repeat. So this is very good for bosses. I prefer to run these other pants for the rest of the dungeon because I like to be tankier and less susceptible to getting one shot. So I generally run these and then swap to this for the boss with meta. Other than that, I will run the other setup pretty much constantly for the rest of the time. Now, as far as gear goes, I'm always running Godslayer Crown. This is pretty insane. You get this off Duriel. This gives you a lot of damage, and what it'll do is whenever you like freeze or stun an elite, it'll group up the stuff around it, and you can just instantly delete them since you're getting 54% extra damage. Very, very powerful, and I would say almost mandatory for higher tier Nightmare dungeons. On the chest, I have a piece with 4 DR stats. We just want as much DR as possible on the chest, and then I'm running Disobedience for extra armor. As far as gems go, on the armor pieces, I'm running rubies for extra health, since that's probably the most benefit to me. For the gloves, we have Gloves of the Illuminator, which gives your fireball a bouncy effect. which is basically just going to give you more AoE. I would say this is absolutely required for a Fireball build, and you should try to get this as soon as you can. So on the pants, like I mentioned, we have two options here. We have Tybalt's or like other pants with more defensive stats on it. I prefer the more defensive option, and then I'll swap to Tybalt's on the bosses. On these pants, I just have 4 DR stats, as well as Ever-Living Aspect, which gives me 25% DR from crowd-controlled enemies. And we're getting that crowd control from the Frostbolt Enchant, which is going to constantly chill stuff. On the boots, I'm choosing to run Esu's Heirloom, which gives me movement speed and mana cost, which are both very nice. I'm also getting critical strike damage, which you can't normally get on boots, so that gives me a little bit more damage. And then these boots have an effect to give you more crit chance based on your movement speed. So right now, these are giving me about 4 to 5% extra critical strike chance, which is what you're going to get from a ring on average. So that's pretty nice. I would be getting a little bit more if I had movement speed on my neck, which I don't have right now, so that's unfortunate. But I really do like these boots. On the weapon, we have Staff of Endless Rage, which I would say is also pretty much required for any Fireball build right now. It just makes your Fireball do extra projectiles every third cast, and it'll increase the damage of those when it does proc. Very, very good. And then for gems, we have the critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies, since that does benefit us quite a bit. As far as the rings, I would say the most important stats you need are crit chance and resource gen. For obvious reasons, resource gen is going to give you more mana, and then crit strike chance is going to make your fireballs hit harder and benefit from all that crit damage that we have. Um, as far as aspects, I'm running Incendiary here, which gives me more mana on a lucky hit proc. This is actually very good in AoE. You'll notice a difference with and without this on in AoE situations. It'll let me just stand here and spam fireballs a lot more. However, on a single target, it's not as good, which is why I very much like to swap to Tybalt's for those higher tier Nightmare Dungeon bosses that are going to live a little bit longer, just so I can have more resources and spam Fireball. And then the other aspect I'm running is Control, which is the same as Domination. So we get a double bonus there of multiplied damage, and it is very, very powerful to boost our damage a lot. And then on the neck, I have 3 curses, which gives Fireball a 60% increased critical strike damage, or 120 if the target's healthy. So a lot of extra crit here, very, very good, and I very much like this on the neck. As far as neck stats, the most important one you want is mana cost reduction, because you want to be able to spam Fireball as much as possible. The other 3 stats here I have are actually very, very good. This is a very solid neck overall. Um, Other stats to look for are pretty much just DR stuff or extra damage passives. Movement speed is also very good if you're going to run Esu's Heirloom because it'll give you extra crit, which is very nice. And then as far as the gems go, I'm running armor here pretty much almost always. The only time I will swap off to one of the resistances is based on like the dungeon or the affixes. Um, so as far as the affixes go, if a dungeon like this where it has shadow damage over time, if I'm doing something like that, I will take out one of the armor pieces and put in an amethyst, and this will go up to about 50%. I would say like around 50% is where you'll start noticing a good difference in resistances and your damage taken. Um, so based on the affix, I'll just swap out one of these gems. I do like to keep more armor because most of the damage you take is like physical hits and swings, and a lot of those hits are what's going to actually one-shot you. So I do like to keep my armor up, but that's pretty much the only time I'll swap. I think that's pretty much everything you guys need to know to get you rolling. I hope you guys enjoy the build. I've been having a blast playing it, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Please let me know if you guys have any questions or if you think I missed anything, and I will be happy to answer your questions. Stay tuned for more Season 2 content, and if you haven't already, please consider liking, subscribing, or sharing the video as it would help me out a lot and I would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll be talking to you guys soon. Later.